Hello, everyone, and welcome to Burn the Ship, the podcast that helps entrepreneurs go all in on their business, and we introduce them to professionals that can help them to do so. Today, we have a very special guest. Charles, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today, Roderick.
Of course, of course. Thank you so much for coming on. So go ahead and introduce yourself and the name of your organization.
Yes, I'm Charles Fisher. I work for a nonprofit in the Dallas-Fort Worth area called Bridges to Life, and we're in 91 of the 94 Texas prisons with a restorative justice faith-based program. We're in 17 states and 7 different countries with Bridges to Life.
Awesome, awesome. We look so forward to learning more about Bridges. And before we get there, though, we want to learn a little bit more about your journey. So, Charles, tell us a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. So I was raised in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I grew up on a farm northeast of McKinney. We milked cows, baled hay. I had a pretty good life. I played football. I moved from a small town to Plano, Texas. And so I went from being a big fish in a little pond to being a little fish in a big pond.
Mm-hmm.
And try to fit in, I started drinking with the guys on Friday nights, and Friday turned into Friday, Saturday, and Friday, Saturday turned into Friday, Saturday, Sunday, etc. And found myself caught up in incarceration after public intoxication, and I had a DWI. So I've been in the addiction in my life that really affected the choices that I made. It affected the jobs that I held down, and so I ended up in the state of Texas prison system. After being released, I was in the prison system when a group of volunteers, prison ministers, came to visit me in one of my darkest hours. And I saw a picture of faith for the first time in my life, and it really transformed my heart. And so once I started to understand that God had a better plan for me than the plan I had for myself, then my life changed. I was in prison doing the same things that brought me to prison, not trying to get out and be a better version of myself. But these volunteers who gave of their time, their talent, their treasure to come visit me made a lasting impact in my life. They changed my destination.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm glad that you were able to come across them. Now, when you moved to Plano and you got into a little bit of trouble there, were you just out of high school, still in high school? What time frame was this for you?
Well, it was basically from eighth grade to senior high
Mm-hmm.
is when I was in the football and hanging out with the guys. From there, I went into the technical vocation of a computer scientist and a tech support manager. I was in the IT industry for many years, from senior in high school up until probably 27 to 33.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very successful in that industry. I did a lot of work for big companies in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I used to go install network servers, desktops, printers, wide area networks, local area networks. I was very technically oriented, and I was a good manager even early on in my life, where I could manage people and I could pull the best out of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say from eighth grade to probably 27 years old was when I was out there in the bars doing the party scene.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I always try to get clarification on that because, we're adults, and as we go matriculate through our life, when we're younger, we make, a little bit different decisions. And as we get a little bit older, we start to think about things. So that's why I wanted to get an idea of where you were. So, all right. So IT, you were doing that. Is that when the trouble happened, around that 27-year-old age?
You know, really what happened was I was making incredible money. I had a six-figure salary, about $175,000 a year. I
Mm-hmm.
had 17 technicians working for me. Um, it's a funny story. I was working for a guy who we would sit in his office every morning. We would plan out our day, what the company was going to do, where I was going to send the technicians to go work. And I was sitting in his office, and we were having our normal meeting, drinking our coffee, getting ready for the day. And he said, "Charles, I want to help you with something." And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "I've been recording our conversation on a mini cassette recorder while we've been talking." He said, I just want to rewind it. I want to play it for you. I want you to hear something. And so I thought, wow, this is strange. What are you, an FBI agent? You know, you're recording our conversation. And he rewound the tape, and when he started playing it back, I heard him speaking as a very successful businessman, as an educated man, and I heard myself speaking as a person who was vomiting vulgarities.
Mm,
I was saying MF this, GD that, F this, you know, and the language that I heard that I was using and the language that I heard that he was using were exact polar opposites. And
mhm.
so he changed my perception of how I spoke at that moment of my life. Now, he did it in a way that I didn't agree with, but the fact that I had to look at myself and see the evidence that I was speaking in this manner and he was speaking in that manner, it really changed a lot of things in my life right then.
Yeah, that's good that you were able to come across someone who cared for you at that time, Charles. I don't think that because I'm a coach as well, and I tell my players all the time if I'm not paying attention or trying to help you, I'm not trying to help you. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is if I'm not messing with you or doing those types of things that he did, then I don't care about you, And I'm glad you were able to come across that person to try to help get that track going. So, all right, so we've been in IT for a while. Then what's next after that 27, 28, 30-year period?
Yeah, I got picked up for possession of a controlled substance. We started going into topless bars to have the Friday buffet, and then Friday turned into Friday Saturday, Friday Saturday turned into Friday Saturday Sunday, and on and on. And the little was a little, but the little wasn't doing, and the little got more and more, and I just got darker and deeper into that lifestyle of those kind of topless bars and in that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up catching possession of a controlled substance. I was hanging out with a gal named Anita. Do you know Anita, Roderick?
No, I don't know, Anita.
I need another hit. I need another dollar. I need another beer. You know
Yes,
her.
I do know. I do know her. Thank you, Charles. Thanks for reminding me. Yes.
Yeah, but we've all been either at that point in our life, or we know somebody who is in that cycle of their life. And for me, there was a real person named Anita, and she was a person that I ended up losing my IT job behind, and I ended up on the streets with her.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, the addiction and the violence just started to escalate. I did about an 18-month sentence in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. I got my first TDC number with a 2-year felony for the possession. And, when I got out 11 months later, I was committing another crime and I went back in.
Mm.
And that's the thing that, for me, I didn't have any help at that point. I was addicted to cocaine. I was addicted to alcohol. Me and Anita were running the streets. So violence had become a way of life. And on December 9th of 2000, I committed an aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. I followed a man home from a car wash where he had just washed my brand new 2000 Camaro SS. He just didn't realize it was mine. He was paying the bills. It was in his title was in his name, but I decided I wanted it, and I
Yeah.
followed him home, and I
Okay.
and I beat him up. I pulled him out of his car, I took his wallet, his cell phone, his keys, and I drove off in this 2000 Camaro SS, and I peeled out right in front of a Dallas police officer. But believe it or not, that police officer let me make it. He didn't pull me over, but I did get arrested a couple of days later after Anita was caught in that car that I had stolen
Mm.
and carjacked. And so she told the police where I was. They came and kicked the door down. They put me in a police lineup. I went through a 18-month trial in Dallas County. On the 22-month, I was in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for a 20-year sentence for aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. And so my life had gotten to a very dark place. And when I went to prison, it got even darker. I wasn't trying to do the right thing in prison. I was doing the same thing that had brought me to prison. And I became an Aryan gang leader, if
Mm-hmm.
you can. And
Okay.
so I used to go down to the chapel to have gang meetings, not to listen to some pastor or preacher.
Mm-hmm.
But one Sunday there was a minister who came in, and we were done conducting our gang business, and we were trying to get thrown out so I could go back to the dorm and gamble on some NASCAR because that was one of my favorite pastimes was watching the NASCAR race on TV and gambling on the parlay. So
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to get thrown out. And this minister up there on the stage, I'll never forget, he said, "Pardon me, officers, what's going on over there?" And I said, "Well, sir, we're throwing these men out. They're disrespecting the service. They're disrespecting God, this chapel, all these men that are here for the right reason. We're getting rid of them. They're going back to the house." And I'll never forget, Roderick, that brother that day said something that changed my life as well. Just like my friend Keith, who helped me change my language,
Mm-hmm.
this guy changed my life by saying, "But officer, those are the men that we came to speak to today." And boy, the impact of hearing that, I thought, how audacious. This man doesn't know me. He doesn't know the choices I've made in my life. He doesn't know why I'm in prison. Who does he think he is saying he came here to speak to me today? And if he knew me, he would run screaming in
Mm-hmm.
the other direction.
Yes, yes, yes.
But that boldness is what really made me start questioning, why is he really here?
Mm-hmm.
Is the chaplain paying him, the warden paying him, is his church paying him? Those are the kind of questions that God started placing before me to really answer those hard questions.
Yeah. Now, with this particular situation, Charles, sounds like you were in the middle of it. You had, had what you had going on. It accelerated once you got incarcerated, and it sounds like you were good at what you were doing, Charles. You
Yeah.
became a leader in it. Now, my question to you is, with having, and I know what I'm about to say is crazy, but having success in your position incarcerated, because you had a successful position there, what events happen in that particular time to say, hey, I'm going to take my stardom, because you were a star,
Right.
and I'm going to listen to this guy and put myself in danger, because it sounds like you could have put yourself in or did put yourself in danger to try to change your ways. Was it a specific thing after his teaching that made you do it? What made you try to make the change?
Yeah. So that was the very first moment where I realized God was trying to speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened next was I got a lay-in. In prison, you can't go anywhere unless you have a little slip of paper, which they call a lay-in, that tells you to go to medical,
Mm-hmm.
tells you to go over here, tells you to go speak to this person from this time to that time. They need to know where you're at.
Okay.
Prison wants to count you. They want to have accountability on where you are. And so I got this lay-in to go to a ministry program in the chapel called Kairos. And I didn't know what Kairos was. I was a gang leader. I didn't go to church to listen to the pastors. And so I went and I started asking people about this lay-in, right? Kairos. What is Kairos? And nobody would tell me. And the funny story here is that people said, "Charles, just go down there." But see, my name wasn't Charles when I was in prison. My name was Big C,
Okay.
because I didn't want anybody knowing my real name, because I didn't want anybody writing an I snitched on me. See, in
Mm.
prison they have these slips called I-60s, and if you catch somebody, with doing wrong, you can write an I-60 on them and send it to the major or the captain, and you can basically snitch on them for what they're doing.
Mm.
If somebody sees me dealing drugs, they can send an I snitched on me. So it's
Okay.
kind of a joke, but I asked everybody about this lay-in, what it is, what is Kairos, and I had built my reputation in prison. As you said, I became prison famous, and I had a reputation of violence, and I was a person not to be messed with. And
Mm-hmm.
I went to my boss lady, who was the supervisor over the maintenance department there on Cofield. And Cofield was a 4,500 man unit.
Mm-hmm.
It was a violent place when I got there, and I had worked hard to get to the position where I was at. I was really a manager of people, just like what I was doing in the IT industry. I was recruiting gang members and managing people. And my boss lady, Miss Lumpkins, told me, "Well, Charles, if you don't go to that Kairos weekend, you can't work for me anymore."
Mm.
And I worked hard, Roderick, to get that position, because it was a cushy job.
Mm-hmm.
You got to work on a computer, which I love working on the computer. I really got to create a opportunity for me to traffic and trade within the prison, which is how I hustled and made money for the gang, and so I didn't want to lose that position.
Mm-hmm.
So I reluctantly went to that Kairos weekend. What happened was I saw these people, these gentle, meek Christian people, who left their job, their family, their home to come visit me in prison, just like that other minister.
Mm-hmm.
And so God started putting people like that in my life. And that's how I went from having a hardened heart, a person who didn't have any time for God, didn't want to think about God, didn't want to read God's book, the Bible. I didn't think about God. All I could think about was survival and what I needed and when I needed it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But God started tendering my heart, and he started using miracles to really get my attention. And the first miracle was I got called down to visitation to go have a visit. Normally, if you have somebody coming to visit you in prison, you know they're going to come see you, and you got to put them on a list. And
Mm-hmm.
so I got a visit, and I went down to visitation at Cofield. You know, it's a 4,000 man unit. There's 450 people in visitation, and I'm looking around to see if I recognize anybody. And I have to go ask this lady who's a sergeant up there at the desk, who's here to visit me. And she said, "Boy, you ought to be ashamed of yourself." And she pointed to the first row over there and the very first table. I see this beautiful woman stand up, and I'm looking at her, and I'm thinking there's a mistake. She
Mm-hmm.
can't be me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I started walking closer to her, I realized it was my 14-year-old sister who had grown up into a woman, and she was a beautiful woman, and she was there at the prison to visit me.
Mm-hmm.
I had a relationship with her since she was 14.
Right.
This was probably 11 years later. And so God brought her into my life. She told me a story of how she had two daughters, how she was thinking about me, how she was praying for me, how she was a Christian. And that was another, drop in God's bucket where he was getting my attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so that led to my mom coming to visit me in prison.
Okay.
And I had her since, probably even 12 years before that. When I came up for parole, I was a three-time felon. I should have done that entire 20-year sentence. It was an aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon,
Mm-hmm.
but I actually made parole.
Okay.
And so I went through a program in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. It was a rehabilitative program down at the LeBlanc unit. And while there, that's when I first got introduced to Bridges to Life.
Okay.
I was a chaplain clerk. He signed me up for all the different programs so that he could find out where they were trafficking and trading, where they were doing the gang meetings, where they were, not paying attention. They were just there to watch movies or eat food. He wanted to know all the details because he worked from morning to evening, and then he went home, and then we had programs in the evening. So he put me on that evening shift to kind of be his eyes and ears.
Mm-hmm.
That was another place where I had, God's favor, where a man trusted me as an offender to be able to tell him things that were going on so that he could be a better chaplain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I ended up getting released on July 5th, 2011. And I got to go back into prison the very first time about 18 months later
Mm-hmm.
to share my faith of how I'd become a Christian during the Kairos program, how God had changed my life. And I went into prison with a Bill Glass prison ministry. They take in motorcycles, they take in performers that dribble basketball, spin them on their fingers, they shoot hoops, they got a guy that has a remote control airplane that he flies around the unit and lands on the rec yard. They
Mm-hmm.
got guys that'll break or rip phone books in half. I mean, it's a dog and pony show, but it's a ministry. They bring in these people to share their talents, but to share their faith. And so I got to lead a man to Christ in that ministry for the first time, just 18 months after being out.
Mm-hmm.
So that really pointed me in the direction of where God has me today. And so I'd like you to kind of, lead us into the next topic there.
Yeah, no worries at all. So from there, you were out for 18 months. During this time, were you working with Bridges, or was that just the first opportunity they would allow you to go back and help people? What was that period once you got out?
Well, right after I started sharing my faith with Bill Glass, I became a prison fellowship ministries volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
And I started volunteering at the Estes unit, which is south of Arlington, Texas, here in the DFW area,
Mm-hmm.
about 40 minutes. My wife and I, we would go in and teach a class from the June Hunt Hope for the Heart series
Mm-hmm.
with Fellowship Ministry. And we were just being faithful that I told my wife when we got married that I was going to be a prison minister, that I was going to serve God the rest of my life, and that when the door of opportunity opened in the prisons, we were going to go in.
Mm-hmm.
And after working with Prison Fellowship Ministries for about a year, I ran into Jim Buffington, who's the chief operating officer of Bridges to Life, at another Bill Glass event.
Mm-hmm.
And so God put me in the front seat of his car. He was driving us to a prison one morning, and he asked me, how did I get involved in prison ministry? And I shared my story, just like I've shared with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And when he heard the comment about Bridges to Life, that I was a graduate of Bridges to Life, I thought his jaw was going to hit the floor.
Mm-hmm.
See, he had just been hired as the chief operating officer, and our founder, John Sage, had tasked him with finding a graduate of Bridges to Life to be the speaker at the first Dallas Fort Worth fundraising dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jim was in the financial world before he became a chief operating officer of Bridges to Life. He didn't know any graduates. But look at what God did, put me right in the front seat of his car and tied us together. And so that's how I got back involved with Bridges to Life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to speak at their fundraising dinner. I started to volunteer with Miss Connie at the Hutchins unit back in 2014. I was a volunteer for 3 years, and then they made me a project coordinator, which is a person who's a volunteer, doesn't get paid, but helps the men get turned out from the prison to the program, helps the volunteers get through security into the program.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, the leadership skills that I had, I was applying those, the same ones that I was using in prison to recruit volunteers. I started recruiting volunteers to help with Bridges to Life. Well, I was working in a secular job at the time. I was chasing a roller skate down a table, working for a plastics company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we had an expansion machine that would blow up this heat shrink tubing, and you would put this gas on the inside of it. And so this roller skate and hemostats would roll down an angled table. And then when it got to the bottom, you would clamp it at the top. You would cut that tube off. You'd bring your roller skate back up, and you'd chase it back down the table. So
Mm-hmm.
you can imagine what a monotonous job that was. But it was a job. And being a three-time felon, getting out of prison, I was grateful to have a job. And so as a volunteer, I was going in and helping to impact other men's lives with Bridges to Life, with Prison Fellowship Ministry, with Kairos, with the Bill Glass Ministry, all of those ministries that had an impact in my life, I started to give back to. And so Bridges to Life offered me a position to become the first graduate staff member of Bridges to Life on January 1st of 2017. And I've been working as the Dallas Fort Worth Regional Coordinator since then. And my primary job uses the same skills that I use to recruit gang members in prison. God, God uses those same skills to recruit volunteers to go into prison to share their faith now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome that you were able to make that change. That is a decision that Charles made, to make that change because again, things were going well down the different path, but they were going well. And I know you had to take a step back to be able to do what you're doing now. And I want to hear all about Bridges. Tell us, what it is that you do. How are you helping people? How can we help you? Give us the rundown on Bridges.
Okay. Bridges to Life was founded by John Sage after the brutal murder of his sister Marilyn.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was taking groceries out of her car into her apartment when these two teenagers, a male and female, decided they wanted to try to take her car. And so they had gone into the apartment with the intent of robbing her and getting her keys and some money from her. She only had $9.37 left after the groceries. And so she was brutally stabbed by knives out of her own butcher block over 130 times, I think, if I remember correctly. But just a brutal, violent murder that happened that caused John Sage to go into a dark place himself. And so he really loved his sister Marilyn, and as a result, he was invited to go into the Texas Department of Criminal Justice through the Victim Services Division to share his story of how his sister had been brutally murdered with offenders. Now, it wasn't the same offenders that had murdered her, but it was other offenders who could listen to the story. And so he came up with the concept for Bridges to Life. He did a pilot program, and the sycamore tree was blossomed into Bridges to Life. And so John Sage got with Kurt Blackard, who wrote a curriculum for Bridges to Life. It's a collection of stories of both victims of crime and offenders of crime. And so the main mission of Bridges to Life is to heal crime victims, to rehabilitate offenders, and to help make our communities safer. And so there's a 14-week program where we take volunteers into prison to facilitate a small group discussion based upon the 14-week curriculum. And what we see is we see men and women whose lives are changed because they start to take responsibility. They are held accountable. They talk about confession. They learn repentance. We ask them to go through the whole process of forgiveness. God, forgive me for the horrible man I've been in my life. Help me to be better. Roderick, would you forgive me for the things that I've done to you? And then I can forgive others for the things they've done to me. And then that self forgiveness where I have to forgive myself because I haven't been what God's called me to be.
Hmm.
And it helped me to come to understand my identity. See, I thought all along my identity was who I thought I was, the experiences that I had in life, and sometimes I thought my identity was what other people said I was. The tech support manager at the IT company, the quality assurance manager at the food production company, the supervisor at the plastics company. We think our identity is either in who we believe we are or who others might tell us we are, but that's the Bridges to Life process helped me to understand neither one of those are true. I'm only who God has created me to be.
Hmm.
And however close I'm living to that purpose or however far away I am from that purpose, only me and God and our relationship shows me where I am in that process.
Hmm. Now, as you are going through this process and trying to help in the rehabilitation process, and try to change lives, what are you guys looking to, or who are you looking to connect with? I know you're connecting with the inmates. Tell us a little bit about that pool of volunteers or the pool of investors. Tell us about that side of it. How can we help you on that end?
No, perfect. So Bridges to Life is a 501c3 ministry. It's been in existence since John Sage founded it over 27 years ago. We raise our budget every single year, and it happens through donors who give. Those people who give of $20, those donors that give of $200 monthly. We have organizations where we can file for a grant and might receive a grant based upon the number of church members that are volunteering out of a church, or maybe like from Craft or somebody like that, how many employees we have that are volunteering with us. So we have the funders, the donors that give, that we want to have a great relationship with and show success to. But we also have crime victims that we're trying to help heal. So those people who have been harmed by crime in their life, maybe they've had a loved one who's been brutally murdered, like John Sage. Maybe they've been a victim of a carjacking, like the man I followed home from the car wash. There's so many people in life who have been affected by crime and are a crime victim that they don't put the label crime victim on themselves, and it's not till they come in with Bridges to Life and share their story that they realize how crime has truly affected them, their family, their community as a whole, and our entire society. And so we want to obviously find those donors who can give. We want to find those crime victims and facilitators who can come in and share their story and help facilitate the program. And then we want to work with the prison officials and others who want us to bring our program in to help rehabilitate their offenders. And so we're trying to get not only in 17 states, we're trying to get in all of the 52 states, but it takes time, talent, and treasure to make that happen.
Yeah, that was perfect lead in. That was going to be my next. I was going to ask about the future because I think you said you were in 91 of the 94. You're in 17 states. I was going to ask what is the future and what plans or what does the future look like for Bridges to Life in your mind?
Well, as a team member of Bridges to Life, obviously I don't make the big decisions like John Sage and Jim Buffington and Joe Lightfoot, but I do know as a team, we are trying to move the organization into helping rehabilitate and heal crime victims. So we would like to do that in all 50 states. You know, the United States, we have a program in Canada. We have one of our newest states that just got added, and what we want to do is we want to have people who see the value of rehabilitating offenders and healing crime victims. Because when a crime victim can go from anger of how they feel about their son being murdered or their daughter being killed by a drunk driver, when they can go from that angry state that keeps them kind of a victim to their own emotions of how they feel, we take them through the process of sharing their story so that they can impact the lives of others and help them rehabilitate. That's a beautiful process right there where the healing can happen. It doesn't always happen overnight,
Mm-hmm,
obviously,
mm-hmm,
because I mean, a person who's lost their loved one to a drunk driver, they feel that pain their entire life.
mm-hmm.
But it helps to take the negative impact of that pain and bring it into a positive impact where maybe they can see where their loved one had died and now they can help others. And so that's the process that we're trying to bring to society, is that we're just taking a candle and we're trying to light others with that. We don't want to let the darkness of the world win. We want to push that back by bringing light into the situations.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then my last question in this segment, it's about you and as I listen to your story, you could be a volunteer with Bridges to Life. It seems like any person can come in there, but for yourself, as I was doing the research on you, I saw you became a pastor, a minister. What is it that made you decide to make that decision? Because you could have stayed a volunteer, you could have continued to share your firsthand experiences of some of the things. What made Charles say, "Hey, I'm going to get ordained and go that route"?
My wife and I, we really wanted to move from the secular world into the nonprofit. So in 2016, we founded a prison ministry called Life on the Rock,
Mm-hmm.
and I was ordained in 2014. From 2014 to 2016, I saw that God had a calling on my life. And so I had a spiritual mentor in my life. His name is James Guerra, and he kept asking me, Charles, are you called to the ministry? And every time he would say that, I would say, well, James, I'm going to do it whether you're with me or not. And so when you have a passion in your heart, when you see something that you're good at, if you love your job and you're passionate about your job, then your job is your passion. And so that's what prison ministry had become for me and my wife. And so just going in with prison fellowship ministry, with Kairos, with Legacy Day, all the different ministries that we were part of, we saw that God really was leading us and teaching us and equipping us to start a ministry. We did that. We still have a relationship with Life on the Rock Ministry. We see the baby that we got to birth and we turned it over to others so that it would continue. We wanted to create a self-sustaining ministry. We have with Bridges to Life. I knew that the calling that God had placed on my life was not to chase a roller skate down a table or not to sit in an office like my boss Keith and to mentor to team members and employees, but my passion was to impact God's kingdom. And so that's what led me into becoming a minister, a pastor, a chaplain. I work for an organization in Plano as a part-time chaplain called Marketplace Chaplains, where I get to go visit people at their job. I get to share about my story, my faith with them at work. Just a quick example, I was talking to a man this week who said that he had been angry at God, that he felt like God hated him. And, those are the conversations that I have daily as a chaplain. And he even expressed that he felt like he would commit suicide. And so, you have those difficult days where you're helping people who are just struggling through their day-to-day life. And then I have those difficult days where I'm helping people who are crime victims that have a heart that hurts, and the pain is so raw and real that they can barely form any words. And then I have those difficult days where I'm in prisons and I'm trying to get volunteers in, but the paperwork's not done. And so I have a volunteer that gets turned around and sent back home. And that's a hard day for me in prison. But then you have those beautiful moments, brother. You know what I mean? Those beautiful
Hmm.
moments where you see that success, where you see that light bulb moment in their lives where they understand that God really does love them. He doesn't have thoughts of evil for them or harm for them, but thoughts of peace to give them a hope in a future. And so the hope in the future that God has given me, how could I not turn around and give that away to others?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you sharing that because I want the audience to relate to you and understand, why you're doing what you're doing. I can tell the passion in your voice, and I wanted to highlight that portion of it because I know you shared with some things and you got burnt out on some other things, but you made sure to highlight that you haven't gotten burnt out on this, and I wanted to
Right.
highlight that for you, Charles. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, you said something a second ago talking about success. Over your journey, you have been successful, either good or bad. You're good. You're good at whatever you put your mind to, Charles.
Right.
Now, being good at that, I am confident that you have acquired and nurtured some best practices or some business skills that have helped you with that success. Do you mind sharing with the audience some of those best practices or business skills that have helped you to be successful that maybe they can add to their mix and try to strive toward that same success?
Absolutely. So growing up on a farm, my father had to work all the time. So me and my brother, we had to be very creative in how we looked at problems. There were a lot of problems that we faced growing up on the farm that we had never experienced, but we had to be problem solvers. So we had to try and fail. And so one of the things that really has been a foundational concept for me is when I look at a problem, I try to find many different solutions. It's a great goal, Roderick, to have a goal that in 3 years I'm going to have $1 million. But if you don't have the steps that it takes to get to that $1 million,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make any sense. You're just having a wish or a hope.
Right.
And so when you're dealing with a tractor that's fallen into a ditch and you're a kid, that's trying to figure out how to get the tractor unstuck before dad gets home so that you get worn out, because you wrecked the tractor in the ditch, you
Mm-hmm.
and your brother, you're coming up with some great ideas, and maybe not healthy ideas all the time, but the thing is you're coming up with solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say a closed mouth won't get fed.
Right.
If you need help, find somebody that knows how to help. In other words, if I want to be a gangster, a drug dealer, and a thug, I'm going to hang around gangsters, drug dealers, and thugs. If I want to be a pastor, a preacher, a minister, a chaplain, I'm going to hang around pastor, preachers, ministers, and chaplains. There's a proverb in the Bible that says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." If I believe that I'm successful in my heart, then you know what's going to happen in my life? My life is going to be successful. If I tell myself I'm stupid, I'm a failure, I'm never going to amount to anything, guess what? I've already lost the race because I never ran it and gave myself an opportunity to run it. And so I have a self speak where I speak positive things over my life. I speak success over my life. I speak love over my life. I tell myself that I'm going to make it through. No matter how difficult the day, no matter how many tears it brings to my heart and my eyes, I make it through those hard days because I have that incredible self talk. And I believe that only comes from God. And so I fulfilled the purpose of who I am by reaching a relationship with Him. I can't do anything apart from Him except try. And in my own strength, most of the time I'll fail. So one of the other things is I see in other people what God has placed in them. And so I try to find the strength that somebody has in their life and I try to speak and bring that out. I try to catch them doing something right, not doing something wrong. So
Mhm.
positive reinforcement in their life leads them to success. Many people have been beat with the stick and not given the carrot. I love to give the carrot because the stick was not something that led me to success. The stick was something that brought me to adversity, and it was difficult in my life.
Mhm.
And I don't want to cause that difficulty in anyone else's life. I've tried the good side of life and the bad side, and I realize that serving God and being a good Christian man and helping others is better than taking what I want when I want because I want.
Mhm.
You know, society doesn't want a taker. Society needs a giver. And so give of your time to find something in others so that you can pull that success out of them. Because you know what happens, brother? When you have successful people around you, you're going to have success. And so the success that I've got in the Dallas Fort Worth region right now, if you look at our KPIs for Bridges to Life, I'm almost number one in recruiting volunteers, bringing in past volunteers who came in for a season and have fallen out.
Mhm.
There's a reason for that because I spend time calling those volunteers and asking them, hey, what's going on with you? How can I pray for you today? Can you get involved in the life-changing transformation that we're making in our program? And then I equip them, train them, and then send them in to go do the work. And I try to make it easy. If I can make it look super simple for them, even though I know how difficult the process was behind the scenes,
Mhm.
if they walk in there and it went flawlessly and they go home and they never think about all of the phone calls, all of the emails, all the, you know, the broken promises, if they never see any of that, and yet they see the opportunity to change someone's life inside a prison, then I believe I've been a success at my job. Whatever the KPIs that we measure say, as long as I'm making it easy for the volunteers to get in, then Bridges to Life is successful.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Those were wise words. There were so many nuggets inside of them. I love how you speak positivity and you speak success because our brain controls so much more. And if we say we are, then that's what we shall be. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, we've talked a lot about your journey. We've talked about the ups, downs, all arounds, and your successes as well. But I want to talk specifically about Charles in this particular section. Now, Charles, let's just say ministry is coming along well. You have tons of volunteers. You find them super donors. Now you guys are in 50 states. Things are coming along well. And Charles had no restrictions on time. He had no restrictions on money. What is it that Charles would do with his time?
Well, I would probably take my Harley Davidson, my dog, and my wife, and I'd go to Estes Park, Colorado, to be up in the mountains, just hanging out in nature. I love being outdoors in cool weather. I don't like the heat like here in Texas. You know, we get 105-degree heat during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be in the air conditioning during the summer. But I tell you, I love the outdoors. I love fishing. I love hiking. I love camping. And so that's what me and my wife we do for fun. When we want to get away, when we want to unplug, when we want to be close to God and just enjoy that self time, that healing of nature, that is the thing that fills me up the most. Is just being able to go to Colorado and hang out there.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about your bike. Is it where she rides with you? She has her own. You have the cart on the side. Tell us more about your ride.
No, we have a 2001 Road King Classic, and so never really was thinking about getting back into the motorcycles because I used to be a motorcycle outlaw gang member,
Cool.
and so I just thought, you know, I would get away from all the things that I used to do, the
Mm-hmm.
places that I used to go.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, God has shown me that being a Christian can be fun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I used to think, man, those Christians are square. They're never fun. You know, they got all these rules they got to live by.
Mm-hmm.
How could they party, right? But
Mm-hmm.
God has given me such a different mindset on how I can live my life and I can have these amazing experiences. And so my wife and I, we ride one motorcycle together. She rides on the back.
Mm-hmm.
We got hard bags on it. We can travel.
Mm-hmm.
Normally we ride, you know, two to 2.5 hours out and maybe 2.5 hours back.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we'll stay overnight. but we love to travel with our dogs. We did never had kids.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I, we got married late in our life. We tried to have kids, but it didn't work. So our dogs have become our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so we love spending time with our families. And I have a large family. My wife has a tight knit family, and so when we can sit down and have a family meal, we love to sit down with our family and spend some time.
Awesome, awesome. Now, Charles, if the people that are watching today have questions about bridges, have questions about your story, which is a great story, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Absolutely. Bridges2life.org. That's bridges2life.org. We have a staff page where they can actually click on the staff page, find the regional coordinators in the different regions. They'll see my picture so they can find the handsome face here on our staff page. If they click on the picture itself, there's a video that kind of shows my story of how I got into Bridges to Life. But my contact information is right there. My cell phone is 817-915-1093. And then my email is Charles, Charles, at bridgestolife.org. That's bridgestolife.org.
Thank you so much for sharing that information, and thank you so much for sharing today. I have had a lot of guests on, and sometimes we have to share some of those not so great things. And Charles, you did a wonderful job of illustrating your way through this story, and we always honor our guests by giving them the last word. So please look into the camera and tell the people something good.
I'm going to leave you with this, and it's out of the Bible. It's in Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. And it says, "Let your light so shine among men that they see your good deeds, but it glorifies your Father in heaven." Thank you for having me. We appreciate everything that you're doing, and look forward to your future success.
Thank you so much, Charles, and we've been a magnificent guest. Thank you for coming on today.
God bless.
And to everyone that is watching today, be kind and thanks.